A little bit more about HISEM. It is an annual event dedicated to educating and mobilizing the residents of Hawaii to protect our islands from the threats posed by invasive species. This year's theme is Invasive Species Are Everyone's Kuleana, emphasizing that protecting our islands is a shared responsibility that we can all take part in aloha aina. And so today we'll be doing a really awesome talk on featuring 4 different dog trainers and handlers who will take us on a virtual huakaʻi across Hawaii to learn about the world of conservation dogs, where wagging tails and keen noses are the frontline warriors against some of our worst invasive species. These remarkable canines, trained to detect the scent of invasive species, play a pivotal role in preserving delicate ecosystems worldwide. From sniffing out the invasive devilweed to tracking down little fire ants and coconut rhinoceros beetles, these 4-legged heroes are indispensable allies in the fight for biodiversity. So this afternoon, we will hear from 4 incredible dog handlers who will be sharing their experiences, insights, and perspectives on working with their superstar dogs. So we'll have the opportunity for a couple questions in between presentations, and we will also have time for Q&A afterwards with all of our panelists and our audience. So please remember to send over any questions you may have via the Q&A or chat function. And with that, I will introduce our first speaker. Okay, so our first speaker today, let me stop sharing my screen. Careful to get her set up. So our first speaker today is Kiyoko Johnson. She has been training dogs and their people in Hawaii since 2008. Her love of dogs came from volunteering for various dog rescue organizations and shelters on the island. And since beginning her dog training career, she has earned various professional training and instructor certifications, including through Certification Council for Professional Dog Trainers, the Karen Pryor Academy, and the National Association of Canines Network. Her passion for scent detection began with her pet dog named Luca, and that did it. Luca, who did not like your typical dog activities like fetch, swimming, and playing with other dogs, but absolutely loved and gained confidence through nose work. And since then, Kiyoko has trained numerous dogs and handlers in scent detection. Kiyoko began her career as an ecological scent detection dog trainer and handler in 2012 through an Oahu Wind Farm Habitat Conservation Program, which utilized canines to locate endangered seabirds and bat fatalities to measure environmental impact. She went on to train and handle dogs for various conservation projects, including a study at Honolulu National Wildlife Refuge, as well as the eradication efforts of invasive yellow crazy ants. That's all happening on Johnston Atoll. And she also carries on her own personal private business, the Country Canine LLC, in addition to serving as the lead canine trainer of the conservation dogs of Hawaii. So with all of that, I would love to introduce our first speaker of today, Kiyoko Johnson.
Hi, everyone. This is Kiyoko Johnson. First of all, I wanted to thank BISC and HISC for hosting this webinar. I'm so excited to be here. And I'm just excited that the use of conservation dogs has grown to a point where a group webinar like this is possible. So it's very exciting. So I'm going to talk to you today about devilweed. And I won't get into the details of the target species itself because there's just not enough time. But I'm going to talk to you about our project. So it started back in 2019. That's when our nonprofit was established. And this was the very first project that we did as an organization. And so we contacted Oahu Invasive Species Committee and asked them what a good target might be for a volunteer group program. And they suggested devilweed because the surveys can be done in publicly accessible hiking trails. And the target also is not highly regulated. We didn't need permits or anything like that. So because we didn't really have a track record as an organization, we were asked to do a proof of concept project with a native plant first, which we did with Akia. And so I recruited my pet dog students and we did the training. We conducted what we call odor recognition tests and then scent discrimination tests with non-target plants. And then we finally did some small scale field trials. And the results were really good. So we reported them to OISC and they helped us get started with the devilweed project by providing plants for training our dogs. So training the dog teams, first up, we had the scent training materials. So in our case, we used the dried leaves first, just cut off from the plant. and then we transitioned to fresh leaves, and then we used potted plants, and then we transitioned to live plants in known locations. So it's very important with detection dog training or conservation training to kind of expose the dogs to a variety of the forms of the targets so that we can be sure that the dog understands them. So fortunately, the devilweed target, we were able to train with the leaves or the dead version, and the dogs were able to generalize to the odor of the live one, which is not always the case with conservation targets. So next up, we have coaching the handlers. So training the dog handler is a huge part of the training too. It's not like, you just train the dog on the odor and then you're ready to do field work. Teamwork between the dog and handler is very important for the surveys to be successful. So some of the things that we coach the dog handlers include reading the dog's behaviors, scenting versus not scenting versus, novel distractions, things like that. How to navigate off-leash work with their dog in a large environment, reading the wind conditions, and then supporting the dog in the find. So those bullet points, I'll go into more detail as I show you the videos and slides later on. So this is a field survey with one of our rock star dogs, Kana. She's like one of the oldest dogs in the program. There you saw a little head lift to the right, which is where the wind is coming from. That's called a change of behavior. And now she's in the cooling odor on the downwind side. And she, at this point, was experienced enough to kind of just head into the bushes. When the dog is new to this, they don't necessarily drive into the bushes. They kind of look at us for a little bit of support. So we follow her into the bushes, and now you can see that her behavior is a little bit more frantic. It shows us that she's very close to the target. She's going back and forth, which is called bracketing. She's going on either side of the scent cone to try to narrow down where the plant is. And so this video is edited down quite a bit, but it took several minutes for the dog to locate where the plant is. And we kind of supported her in moving towards the plant. And then in the next video, or actually, so yeah, this is where she gets her Frisbee reward, which is her favorite thing. So in the next video, I'm going to show you like a completely different version of a find where it's actually really easy. It's right off the trail. She just goes a few meters off, finds the plant, alerts, comes back to get me, shows me again.
Oh my God, look at that little.
So there's that little seedling that she found. So sometimes it's really easy for the dog to pinpoint it, but it's not always the case. And so some of the survey challenges that we've experienced include lots of bushwhacking. So you saw in the video a little bit of the environment that we're in. This picture down below is Roberta and Kana in Mokuleia Trail. And not only is there a lot of bushes, but there's a slope as well. So reading the environmental conditions. So these environments that we work in are not wide open spaces with consistent wind. In the forest, the wind direction often changes, like back and forth, stops and starts again. So we really have to keep an eye on the wind to make sure that we can support the dog in moving towards the target. And as I mentioned earlier, sourcing, which means pinpointing the actual location of the target, can be quite difficult at times, especially if it's, raining or drizzling. The odor doesn't do what it might normally. And it requires dogs to have certain traits. So because we're working these dogs off leash in environments that have, pigs and mongooses and chickens and stuff, like ideally we have a dog that is not too distracted by stuff like that. Dogs that are comfortable with strangers and other dogs, because on the public hiking trails, we run into that as well. So beyond Oahu, the last few years, we did deploy to Hawaii Island as well, and we worked with the BISC crew, who are awesome. And so we are helping them to determine the spread, because the devilweed plant was found a few years ago, and they're not quite sure yet how much it has spread. So we've gone there for 2 years in a row. And some of the challenges that we faced on Hawaii Island, which are different from Oahu, include the very hot climate. It's humid, a lot more humid and hot than Oahu. And the wind is low, even though it's on the windward side. And then, of course, there's heavy rain at times. And the thick vegetation, so we thought that Oahu vegetation is thick, but it's nothing compared to the Big Island, right? So, and then there's property access issues. It's not always possible to get access to enter the properties we want to survey. And the properties there tend to be very big as well. But the BISC staff does a great job with outreach. So we were able to survey a lot of places like some of these ranches that you saw in the previous slide. So now I'm going to show you a few samples of GPS tracks, just to show you what kind of teamwork might be involved in our surveys. So this is an example of Pupukea Palmalu trails on Oahu. So this is Ruger and his handler, Sandy. We were going down the trail this way, and then suddenly the dog caught the target odor in the wind. So he went into the bushes, but at a certain point, he couldn't get beyond the thick bushes. So he couldn't actually get to the plant, but as handlers, we could see that he was in odor. He was trying to get to it. And we knew that there was a trail on the upwind side. So we took him around to the other side, walked him in a little bit, and then boom, he found the plant right around here, which is about 55 meters from the original location where he caught the scent. So that was definitely an example of good teamwork. So here's another one. This one is Halaba Heights at the top of Halaba Heights Road. And this was with Brock, who is a German Shepherd mix, and his handler, Sue. So on this day, the wind was not very strong. It was maybe about 5 miles per hour. And so you could see in his red track that he caught the scent right here and headed into this area. And we zigzagged for quite a bit and tried to support him in finding the plant, but we were never able to find the actual plant. So we just made a mental note of it. And this does happen sometimes with our targets, that we just make a mental note and decide to come back later. So a couple of years later, I came to the same hiking trail with a different dog, Kana. And on this day, the wind was very good. And so you can see in this cyan track that she caught the scent also here. And then she does a little zigzag all the way to the plant, which was 107 meters from the original point of detection. And so when the dog zigzags like this, I mentioned earlier the concept of bracketing. So she's kind of going on the edges of the scent plume or the scent cone until she can narrow it down at the very end. So this is just an example of how the wind conditions can affect your detections as well. So the field successes we've had are large detection distances. I mentioned in the last slide that it was 107 meters from the trail where the plant ended up being. So the dogs can find seedlings and detect plants that are not visible to the human eye. It could be behind obstacles or it could be very small. The dog teams definitely help to raise awareness about invasive species in general and about devilweed and about biosecurity and stuff like that, because most people like dogs, and when they see us working in the field with our vests on, they ask what we're up to. So it gives us a chance to do a little bit of awareness raising. And then our program provides field experience to green dog teams. So since this is a volunteer program, there's no pressure to go out in the field every single day or to perform in a certain level. So it just gives a nice low pressure way for these dog teams to learn how to work with their dogs. And then hopefully they can do other projects in the future that might require more skills. And then finally, dogs trained on Oahu may deploy to the other islands. Unfortunately, only Big Island so far has detected devilweed, and there won't be any other islands. But if there are, then we could definitely deploy with our dogs. Thanks so much for joining today. You can find us on our social or web, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Awesome. That was great, Kiyoko. Do we have any questions from anyone in the room or not? I have a.
I see Charlotte raised her hand.
Oh, thank you. I couldn't see that. Go for it, Charlotte. Well, Charlotte is coming on mic, I think. I do have one in the meantime. Oh,
Sorry. I couldn't figure out how to do this.
no worries. Go for it.
I was just wondering if there's certain types of dogs that are better at this. It looked like you had a bunch of different types.
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say that the dog needs to have a certain level of drive. So it's not necessarily about the breed, but are they motivated to find the plant and work for their food or their toy? We have also found that some of the herding breeds or the breeds that tend to stay closer to the handler can be quite successful, because if the dog ranges way too far, it's hard to keep an eye on them in the forest environment and see if they're actually in odor, we call it, and support them. But yeah, the main thing is that they're very driven to work for their food or their toy.
Thanks.
All right. And then we have one from Elizabeth Speed. How often do you take on new volunteer dog teams?
Yeah, we don't really have a formal program for taking on new teams, but we do have a requirement that dog teams have prior experience with just basic scent work, how to imprint a target odor. So we ask just that people have at least a year of scent work experience on their own through community classes. And then if they're a right fit for the Devilweed program, then we can definitely work with them on the field training.
Great to know. Great to know. And then one more question for now. As a follow-up from the last one. So how do people who are interested in volunteering start the process? Oh, okay. Maybe you got to that already.
Yeah, we do have a volunteer page on our website that kind of explains that a little bit. So I can put that in the chat.
Great, that'd be wonderful. Okay, and then the rest we'll save for our Q&A. So thank you, Kiyoko, and then we will switch on to Deborah. You got it, Deborah? Wonderful, nice. So I think Deborah is getting that all loaded for us, and I will go ahead and introduce our next speaker. So Deborah Gocross, she has been an animal lover since her childhood in Colorado, where she was first got involved with exotic animal training for motion pictures and rehabilitation and research of wild hawks, owls, and eagles. Deborah has since lived in Hawaii since 1980 and spent many years as a middle school science teacher. She involved the students in conservation projects while teaching them the importance of protecting native plants and animals of Hawaii. Deborah spent a few years spent a few years on Oahu in the early 90s and graduated from the UH Manoa with a degree in secondary education with a focus in science while working full-time as a reptile keeper at the Honolulu Zoo. In 2003, Deborah joined the Kauai Canine Search and Rescue, where she trained and certified along her dog Astro to become a wilderness search dog team. They helped in searches with missing hikers, families lost in floods, lost Alzheimer's patients, and others in need of assistance. In 2020, as a part of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Deborah trained her dogs Luna and Xena to detect native wetland birds affected by avian botulism. To this day, Deborah and her dogs make weekly visits to the taro fields of Hanalei National Wildlife Refuge to survey for wetland birds affected by the botulism. In 2023, Luna and Xena were awarded 250-hour volunteer pins from the Fish and Wildlife Service for their dedicated service. And Deborah also received the Volunteer of the Year award. Currently, Deborah volunteers for numerous organizations as a dog handler, educator, conservationist, and communicator. And I am just honestly in awe of everything Deborah does for communities, but also hope to see more grant and job opportunities created for this type of work. Today, Deborah will be sharing about her experience spearheading the Coconut Rhinoceros Beetle project on Kauai, in addition to establishing a down seabird project. So thank you, Deborah, for being here, and mahalo for your presentation.
Oh, thank you. Let's see. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. And I'm really thrilled to be here. This is exciting for me. I get to talk about my dogs. So on this opening slide, you see Xena and Luna. Xena is 5 years old now, and Luna is 7. And with that great introduction, you heard about our work with the Hanalei taro fields. We're involved with a team of 4 dogs that are all detection dog trained and certified to find the native wetland endangered birds that we have in the taro fields of the Hanalei Refuge. And these birds are sick or have died from avian botulism. So it's very important for us to get them out. If we can rehab them, that's great. But if the carcass is laying there, then an outbreak can occur. So we try to find all the birds, and our dogs alert on either the sick or the dead birds. This has been a great success. We're going into our 4th year of doing this, and we're the only ones in the state, but we've really prevented a few outbreaks, which is just really rewarding to be able to do that. And of course, the dogs love it. So it's a wonderful program. This last year, we decided to introduce a new scent, and that's seabird scent to our dogs. We really wanted to help out the fledglings seabird fallout season that happens during September through December. These fledglings are leaving the nest for the first time. They're just trying to get out to the ocean, and they get confused by the lights from resorts, hotels, shopping centers, libraries, and they see the bright lights, they fly down, they get confused, fly around that light until they drop to the ground. And then unfortunately, cats or dogs will pick them up at that point because they're not able to take off on their own. So we wanted to see if maybe we could find the birds that are on the ground and see if we could get them to rehab. And it was very nice. We found 2 of the highly endangered newels, shearwaters, which 90% of the world's population is on Kauai. And so the conservationists were actually really excited that our dogs were able to find that. Zena here, she found one underneath a trash dumpster, and the other one was caught in a chain link fence, just like the one behind her here. So that's the reason why when the state called us and said, hey, would you like to try to train your dogs for CRB? We said yes. And of course, it's a very long learning process. The first thing, Kiyoko was very smart to arrange a tour of the UH lab, so we could learn and gather some more information and understand exactly what we were getting into. So here we are in the lab. And we came back with some supplies. The first supplies that we had were the frozen frass. And we brought them back. I brought them back to Kauai and kind of decided not to use those as the first training target, just because we wanted to wait until all the protocols were followed so that we could get some of the grubs. So you see over on the right, we, after everything was in place, the UH lab, they were able to send over those grubs. They were frozen, dead, frozen. And so our training aid was dead, frozen, thawed grubs. Maybe not the most ideal thing, but that's what we had to start with. The middle picture shows dental cottons, and we had this idea that you could put the cottons inside the containers that contain the live grubs, and it would pick up the live scent. It was a very, very light scent. So even though it was included in my training, I don't know if it really made much difference. We started in October last year, and we, like I said, used the dead CRB that was frozen and then thawed for scent. And the scent was very light. And also some of the samples included a slight antiseptic smell. I don't know if it came from the bag that they were in or where that smell was coming from, but it did concern me a little bit because I didn't want the dogs scenting on that scent. I wanted them on the larva scent. But they recognized that the scent was different and they were curious about it. And then, of course, following up with treats really hooked them into trying to locate CRB. And this is just an example on the right of the logs that we keep. This is only about a quarter of the log. And it just helps with your future training. So here we are at a site. Now we've been training since October last year, but it was only a month ago that the dogs finally were able to be introduced to live scent. Oops. There we go. Okay. So this was their first introduction, and I was extremely excited. We had found a couple of grubs. We put them out right on top of the soil. I went to go get Luna, brought her back, and she walked right past them, not even recognizing the scent. I was devastated. So went back took them back to the car and put out the grubs in another area, and then brought them out again and introduced them, and they started understanding, okay, well, after a few treats, this is what I'm starting to look for now. And by the end of the day, they were great at it. They were finding the grubs. Now, of course, they were still on top of the soil, not buried, but they started finding them with no problem at all. Then we were able to go back a couple of weeks ago, and that provided a whole new experience for us. So the dogs have been searching for grubs now that are on top of the soil. And this time there was a breeding site that we could take them to. And so as we walked towards the breeding site, we had the grubs on top of the soil. And yet when they got to the grubs, they didn't alert. And I'm always looking for that sit alert, which happens just automatically for the dogs. And they were not sitting. And so I was a little confused, but then understanding after talking to Kiyoko and talking to Roberta that the scent was all over the place. It was, above ground, underneath the ground, and it was in a wide area. And the dogs, they were walking around with their nose held high, back and forth, up and down. And it wasn't until they finally sat that I went in and started digging. Well, Luna, when she got up from her sit position, there was a CRB adult right underneath her. She had sat right on top of one. And then Zeno, when she was searching, she kind of moved over to the right-hand side, nose up, nose down. And then finally she sat, and I started digging, and a grub just fell right out. So that was very exciting because they are scenting that area. They are scenting those areas. So we're still working on it, but we're learning a lot. And I have to say that we're extremely grateful for, of course, Kauai KISS and for the CRB response and Department of Ag here. Everybody's been very supportive of us. And we're really hoping that we are going to be able to do a lot more in the future. This is our new team. Whoops, we are growing our team. We're trying to train up right now. And so all of these dogs are being trained for CRB, and we're hoping to certify later on this year. I do have a few suggestions, though. I've really learned a lot. Okay, there we go, recommendations. So I'm a volunteer, and I've been doing all of this voluntarily, and I don't mind that at all because I love working with my dogs, but I have to say it's a lot of work. So I would say hire a supervisor to train canine teams, to supervise, to find the locations and go to the requests that are needed, and create canine team positions, and that people and their dogs pass a skill test. The volunteer teams are, I think they're very valuable as backup or additional surveyors, but it really does take a lot more than just a couple of teams to, I think, manage this CRB infestation. Now, I would really suggest training with live scent right from the very beginning. I was kind of disappointed when my dogs didn't pick up on that live scent. So I think, of course, that would be very valuable. Research labs set up on the islands, the other islands. Conditions are different, and we require maybe additional protocols. And it would be very nice to have a lab set up right on this island that we could go visit and we could ask questions to, and also to bring our CRB that perhaps need to be taken care of. Of course, I know that everybody is reviewing methods of import, contamination, and containment. It's a priority, especially on Kauai. And please give all the neighbor islands as much priority as Oahu. Every time I see grants coming up, they always tend to be for Oahu. So I know that there's probably things coming for Kauai, but there's a lot of people on Kauai that are very concerned about this and would really like the help. Okay, that's it for me. Thank you so much. And please, in the future, come visit Kauai.
Thank you, Deborah. That was great. Yes. I kako what Kim says, just mahalo for many of all of your thoughtful suggestions, because those are all great final points to have just to get more support for this work, both with funding and yeah, just awareness. So thank you very much for your presentation. So we have a few questions here. Let's see. We have someone from the crowd who wants to know, does the size of the dog matter in your field search? Or
Good question. No. No, the size doesn't matter. It's just like Kiyoko was saying, it's the skills and you know what the characteristics are of the dog. Actually, even in the taro fields, we've even thought about getting a little mini kind of dog that could perhaps actually go into the taro fields to locate carcasses. So,
oh,
yeah.
cool. And are dogs proud of their work? Kind of a philosophical question.
I think that, yeah, the treats are the things that really drive them. My dogs have toys all over the house. Actually, they don't even play with them. I try to tempt them, but the minute that I put on my shirt saying that we're going to work, they are running for the car. They won't eat. They are so excited to go work. That's all they want to do. So it's wonderful to work with your dog. It's a great partnership.
Do they have a favorite treat?
I do change it. For a while it was sausages. Now it's steak.
Oh, very nice. Great. Well, with that, I think we'll transition over to our next speaker, Roberta.
Mute yourself.
Okay, while Roberta is bringing up her slides to our webinar today, I will do a little introduction. Okay. So Roberta Biter has been a dog handler and trainer with Conservation Dogs of Hawaii since 2019. She and her dog Kana, who you saw in that video that Kiyoko had in her presentation, are founding members of the Conservation Dogs of Hawaii's Invasive Species Protection Program. Roberta has also provided her expertise to develop CDH's new programs and has participated in assessing and selecting shelter dogs for Guam's Department of Agriculture's Biosecurity Canine Program. Outside of CDH, Roberta is the canine team lead at the Coconut Rhinoceros Beetle Response Team, a collaborative partnership with the Hawaii conservation organizations that aim to eradicate the invasive insect from Hawaii. As part of her position, Roberta supports the canine teams with planning, record and data keeping, developing SOPs, training, and surveying. In addition to her canine background, Roberta has a bachelor's degree in biology and a master's in environmental sciences, and has over a decade of experience as an environmental consultant on the island of Oahu.
Hi, everyone. I decided to use a different computer and it's not allowing me to share my screen.
Oh, no.
I'm so sorry. Are you able to go with the next speaker and that will give me time to change my computer?
Can do.
Sorry about that, guys.
No worries. It happens.
Okay, I'm gonna swap it.
Okay, thanks, Roberta. Trisha, are you ready?
I will see you back in a little bit.
No problem.
Yes, I am ready. So,
Okay. While you're bringing up your slides, I'll do a little introduction. Okay. So Trisha Wilson is from the Maui Invasive Species Committee, otherwise known as MISC. She is the Little Fire Ant Detector Dog Handler. Trisha has a background in education, art, and science, and has a degree in biology from the University of Utah. She has lived in Maui for 7 years and has worked for MISC on the Little Fire Ant team since 2022. When Freddie, the LFA sniffer dog, was ready to join the LFA team, she was willing and able to step up to be his handler. She spent 2 weeks in Brisbane, Australia, training with the Craig A. Murray Dog School, and brought Freddie to Maui this May to begin their partnership protecting the islands from these invasive ants. Thank you, Trisha, for being here today. And we're excited
thank
to hear.
you.
Hi, everybody from Maui. My name's Trisha Wilson. I'm the LFA detector dog handler for Maui Invasive Species Committee. Thanks, everyone. It's been awesome to hear about your work with the dogs, and thank you for the work that you do. I feel privileged to work with dogs and to be a part of this community. So let's get started. So this project for MISC has been 10 years in the making. So in 2014, MISC was connected with the Craig A. Murray Dog School. They're experts in dog training, and they had this idea to train a dog to detect little fire ants. And it took about 5 years before the first dog was ready. There was some red tape. So 2019, there was a dog ready. And of course, that's when COVID hit. So that dog had to be placed elsewhere. So then they had to start over. So last year, Freddie was ready, and I was in the right place at the right time. So this is Freddie. He was chosen to be a detector dog because he's athletic. He's highly play driven. So he's lives to play. That's all he wants to do. He's very tenacious and self-regulating. So all really good traits that we want in a detector dog. And he lives to work. So he's been trained to detect little fire ants. So why are we targeting little fire ants? These are some of the worst invasive species on the planet. They form huge super colonies that take over, like just blanket entire ecosystems and push other ant species out and affect other animals. They also cause painful stings for people and animals, and they can cause blindness in pets if they get into their food and sting their eyes. So they're really bad. They're really unpleasant. They also jeopardize agriculture and the way of life in Hawaii, and they're very economically costly when their infestations take hold. So estimates for Big Island, where they're no longer eradicatable, the cost is into the billions. So we don't want that to happen on the other islands, which is why being able to work with dogs to detect them is super important. So, all right, so I spent 2 weeks in Brisbane, and what that consisted of was transitioning Freddie from his trainer to me, and that was time, play, and care. So, and that was actually probably the easiest part. It happened really quickly. And then I had to learn foundations like dog psychology, like what motivates the dogs, positive and negative reinforcement, and then a lot of the definitions that Craig uses, just so I'd understand his language when he was training me for all the searches. And then also the biology of odor detection in the dog itself, and then the science of odor, like the fluid dynamics when you're working with odor, like we talked about, some of you have already mentioned, wind, moisture, temperature, and then landscape. All of those things can affect where the scent's moving and where it pools and how it stays, and you have to read the landscape when you're working with the dog. So I had to learn all of that. And then we started doing searching. So I learned how to sub and bridge. So when Freddie indicates, I sub his indication with a ball. So I throw it right towards him, or I bridge with a verbal ya or a clicker. Both will give the reward to him, but it makes it so that I can sub him away from something if I can't put the ball right where he's indicating. And then I also learned scent maintenance for him. So scent discrimination and how to maintain his training, how to maintain his indications. And then I learned systematic and unhindered searches and broadacre searches, where you have a landscape and then you have to read the wind, all the conditions, and then kind of come up with a plan and do swaths with Freddie. Like I would walk and he will kind of do a figure 8 around where I'm walking. And then depending on the wind, I have to make a kind of a map in my head as I'm watching him work. So the next few slides are going to be videos of some examples of this. So this video doesn't have sound. This is some of the scent discrimination training. So it is a mess. It's all these different materials, plastic, metal, and then filter papers that are blank, and then also filter papers that have the LFA scent on them. So that was an indication and a sub there. And then this one, this is the scent wheel. So this is part of his scent maintenance. So this helps keep him really strong on his indications. So you'll see he puts his nose right in it and he lays down. So then I sub, that's his reward. And then this next one was the first bush search that we did in Australia. So this is an indication of what he would do, like how we would do an unhindered search where I'm doing swaths and he's kind of running around, and then what he does when he actually finds the scent. All right, so it happens really quickly and it's something that you're looking for. So when he detects, you're first looking for an attitude change. So this indicates that he's smelling something. It might not necessarily be the little fire ant scent that we're looking for, but he'll show interest in something. And then the next stage would be the OPR, or obvious physical reaction, which is where you can tell he's excited and he becomes a lot more focused. He gets excited because he knows he's gonna get to play. This is where we would tell whether he's on LFA scent or not, because you can tell by his body language. It's really hard to photograph and it's hard to see in a video. And then finally, indication, which he's been trained when he can pinpoint the scent, when he knows exactly where it is, he will lay down, face his nose right toward it, and then wait for his reward, either with bridging or subbing. And then what we did after we got him to Maui, we gave him a few days to rest and acclimate. And then we actually took him to Hana, to a known infestation where we do have LFA and we know where they are, because we didn't want to take him into a huge infestation and plop him in the middle. We needed to know where the edges were so that we could bring him from outside of the infestation into it, to be able to see his behavior and see what he was going to do. Because up to this point, he had only worked on lab produced scent materials. So our scent papers and botanicals had been produced for us by Hawaiʻi Ant Lab. So that's all he had known up until now. And so it was really important to get him onto live ants and to be able to see that he could indicate and do everything he's been trained for in the field in Hawaii, which is what we need him to do. And so he detected live LFA with an indication after 2.5 days. So that was really, really exciting for us. This next video shows that first indication. So you'll see he goes right toward it. And when he's confident, he pinpoints it, he indicates right there. He lays down and points his head. And this, I couldn't throw the ball through the fence, so I had to bridge and throw it behind him. So that was pretty exciting moment, because it shows that he knows now what his job is. He knows what to look for. He's confident. He knows that when he finds the live LFA, he knows what to do. So that was really, really exciting. So what now? So we're going to continue to work with Freddie on live ants as we develop our program. This is completely new still, even though it's 10 years in the making, we're still figuring out as we go. And we also have, we have to have live ant scent materials being produced for us, either by Hawaiʻi Ant Lab or figuring out how to do it ourselves. Deborah talked about some of the challenges of producing scent materials also. And then of course, obedience and training maintenance for Freddie and for me, because a lot of this is really rigorous. It's a lot more rigorous than most dog just pets and stuff. So it's training for me also. And then he will be used on Maui and other islands for ant report follow-ups, early detection, nurseries, post-treatment monitoring, and delimitation support. So like post-treatment monitoring would be making sure that the sites that we have been treating for a while and we haven't found any ants are still LFA free. So that means if you have stinging ants, please let us know. This is the number to call for all of Hawaii. Anything that you don't think belongs on Hawaii, please give us a call, let us know. Maybe Freddie can come check it out if it's ants. And then these are our funders. So we'd like to thank these groups, because these are the groups that have made this whole thing possible and have supported this project for a long time. And it's really cool that we finally get to see it come to fruition. Thank you very much. Give us a call, find us on the internet. You can email me with any questions. And MISC is also on Facebook and Instagram. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Trisha. That was a wonderful presentation. Right, I think we got a couple questions here before we move on to the next one. So our first one, we'll just go to the chat from Kiyoko. At what threshold of odor will Freddie indicate, i.e. how many ants?
We're not sure. That's a really good question. So we kind of noticed when we were working with him in Hana that he immediately was showing obvious physical reaction everywhere. He was excited, but he would kind of dive in and then not know what to do. So we think he is doing like a certain volume that's probably similar to what he's used to, like from the scent papers that he's been trained on, but we don't know exactly what that volume would be. That's something that we're definitely going to look more for as we work with him more in the field with live ants. So great question.
Oh, and then a follow-up to that, are you ever able to visually confirm Freddie's find in a field survey? And if not, how do you decide whether to reward the dog?
Yeah, so that was one thing that we worked on with him in Hana, and we surveyed a few of the spots that he indicated right after, and didn't always find LFA, but in one of the spots that he indicated when he came out, he actually had LFA on his face. So I had to like brush him off and have him have a swim in the river real quick. So he is finding them. So
Great, great, great to hear. Sorry about that, Nicole. Okay, I just did it show up in the Q&A. All right, so I'll just go for that one. So from Nicole, is eye protection important for LFA searches, like goggles?
we haven't used goggles with him. We're just, most of the time, he's probably not going to get them on unless he's going into bushes. So when we are working with him in the field, we're looking for not just LFA, but because there's other plants, as you guys know, in Hawaii, that if he gets too much into like the Mimosa pudica or any of the thorny plants, it's not, he's not going to want to search anymore. So it's kind of part of it. There's limited areas where he can work. And it's just something that we're going to be aware of. I feel like most of the time the goggles would just be in his way. So he would just fight it. So great question though.
Fair enough. Well, thank you, Trisha. I know we have plenty of other questions in the Q&A, but we'll save those for afterwards, and we'll transition over to Roberta. Thank you, Trisha. How's it looking, Roberta? Does it seem like it'll load up?
Yes. Thank you, Trisha, for jumping in.
I'll do a quick little introduction again, just so folks remember. But Roberta is a dog handler for the Conservation Dogs of Hawaii organization since 2019. She and her dog Kana are founding members of the Invasive Species Detection Program. And she has also provided her expertise to other programs such as assisting and selecting shelter dogs for Guam's Department of Agriculture Biosecurity Canine Program. Outside of CDH, Roberta is the canine team lead at the Coconut Rhinoceros Beetle Response Team, a collaborative partnership with Hawaii conservation organizations that aims to eradicate the invasive insect from Hawaii. As part of her position, Roberta supports the canine teams at planning, record, data keeping, developing SOPs, training, and surveying. In addition to this background, she has a bachelor's degree in biology and a master's in environmental sciences, and has over a decade of experience as an environmental consultant on the island of Oahu. So thank you, Roberta, for being here.
Well, thank you for having us here and giving us the opportunity to share how our dogs are helping the CRB response on Oahu. We start with a quick introduction on CRB. I'm sure most of you guys are very familiar with it by now. It's an invasive species of beetle in Hawaii, and it's native to Southeast Asia. The adults feed on palms and other tropical plants, and they breed in decomposing plant material. You see in this picture what an adult CRB looks like. It's about 2 inches in length, and it has a visible horn. The larvae are about 3 inches long. They get up to 3 inches long with a large brown head. Signs of infestation in palms are, you can look for the boreholes and the V-shaped cuts in palm fronds. And here we list some of the treatment options that we have. CRB was first detected on Oahu in December 2013, and just last year, last year, we had detections on Kauai, Maui, and Big Island. And here, finally, our canine team. We have the first one on the top here is Coop. He's a pointer mix, and Ryder is and Bravo are both lab mixes. They were all rescues, procured, trained, and certified by USDA. The program started back in 2019 and with Ryder and Bravo, and Coop came in 2021 as the backup dog. The team is managed by our CUH on Oahu and funded by USDA. Our handlers are also trained and certified by USDA. Unfortunately, Ryder and Coop passed away earlier this year, so we are working with USDA to procure a new dog, or possibly 2 dogs. And here's the human side of the team. We have Cody, who is Bravo's partner. He started back in 2019, and he has a background in the veterinary field. And here is Marley. She joined in 2021, partnering with Ryder, and she has a background in conservation. She's also here with us and available for to answer questions that you may have directly for her as a handler. Well, I guess I should say that's me with Kana from Conservation Dogs of Hawaii, and I'm the team lead. And here's how, how important it is to have the canine program. And it is literally finding a beetle in a haystack if you ever got to see what a breeding site can look like. And but the dogs, they do reduce the resources needed to identify these breeding sites by a lot. And they also help us quickly narrow down the search areas and focus on management efforts. And potential breeding material can be extremely large. So it can take weeks for field crews to manually get through the material. But with the dogs, it takes only a few minutes. There are field challenges. It's not all that simple. Many hazards that we have to look out for and manage appropriately to keep our handlers and our dogs safe. Here we list a couple of them. And other very significant field challenges, the scent availability. It's not all that straightforward, and just the presence of CRB in a breeding site doesn't necessarily mean that the scent is readily available for the dog to detect it. So we need to give them a hand. There are many environmental factors that also affect the behavior or the scent behavior. And here we list a couple of them. Sorry if I'm getting a little bit rushed here. If I'm going too fast, just let me know and I'll slow down. So here's how we give them a hand. We make sure, well, CRB larvae is most often found at the bottom of a pile near the soil level. So we aerate the pile to increase the airflow and help the dog detect the scent if it's there. We also schedule early morning surveys to avoid the heat and the strong winds in the morning, and we also work with the wind. And we also have many training challenges, and the dogs are amazing tools, but they're not robots. So we do have to be in a very strong connection with them. And so a great, really close relationship between the handler and the canine is just crucial for success. The dog may not always give a final response. Well, our dogs are trained to sit as an alert when they find their target odor, which is CRB. But depending on the site conditions, the dog, who knows why, the dog may not give an alert, but the dog will show a change of behavior and in the presence of CRB. And so the handler is trained and capable of interpreting that significant change of behavior and then find a breeding site regardless. And on the other hand, the dog may indicate incorrectly. So it is the handler's job to read the dog's behavior and follow up on the response appropriately. And so here's a question. So why may a dog give an incorrect indication? So there are a couple of possibilities. And one of them is the dog may just be struggling or frustrated. Maybe there's just no CRB there and they are still trying to get paid for their job, and they may give a false, may give you a false response. They also may be picking up on cues that they previously associated with the target odor, even unintentionally. It doesn't really mean that they are trying to cheat. And they may also be generalizing incorrectly, and we'll cover that a little more in details. And so we do train a lot. It's important to keep the dogs sharp, the handlers sharp, and they live for this. They love to get out there and work, and whether they're training or doing a real survey, the dogs don't really care. They just want to work. And we do in training, we have a positive response rate of 80 to 90%. And the false response, we've kind of categorized them here based on what we've been able to identify during a training session. Of course, if you're getting a false alert in training, it is very important to identify what's the reason, right? So we are always kind of, brainstorming around it so that we can address it appropriately. And one of my favorite here is the presence of oriental flower beetle, and we'll show, if you're not familiar with that, it's very widespread on the island of Oahu. They are on the left, to see the CRB larvae and the adult, and the OFB on the right side. And it's very similar. If you're not familiar with CRB versus OFB, it's very easy for you to just get them mixed up. And they are closely related, and they do share the same breeding material very often. So it's become part of the scent picture for the dogs, because when they are in the field getting rewarded for finding CRB, OFB it's very likely to be there as well. And so what we found out was that in the absence of CRB, the dogs started to respond to OFB. And we got to it was about 80% of the time they got, if there was no CRB, only OFB, they would respond to it. But once we identified the problem, we worked hard to address it, and we were able to reduce that false response rate from 80 to 13%. And here are a couple of big wins. We have been able to find 175 breeding sites on Oahu, which resulted in over 3,000 individual CRB removal. This number is extremely underestimated. Many times, once we confirm the presence of CRB after a significant change of behavior or alert, we may just pull a couple of larvae and then just treat the pile. Our dogs were also responsible for early detection of new infestations on the west, north, and east sides of Oahu. And we are now also doing biosecurity clearance of mulch plants prior to shipping, and they are amazing outreach tools. People just love them, and they love to do it too. And here are our conclusions. Well, the invasive species management is everyone's responsibility, including the community. Working with scent detection dogs has many benefits, but we are also realistic with our expectations regarding their limitations. And they are just one component of a very complex program. And that's it. Thank you, everyone. And here is our contact. If we are not able to answer all your questions today, feel free to reach out and we'll be happy to chat a little more.
Great, thank you, Roberta. That was excellent. Wonderful, thank you. So I have a couple of questions here in our Q&A from Anthony Antonucci. The first one is, can these dogs be cross-trained to search for different invasives, both plants or insects, based on scent? Thank you.
Technically, yes, but our dogs, they're specifically trained for CRB.
Okay. And have any of the dogs found unexpected things like truffles instead of the intended target?
I don't think so. Have we, Marley? Well, I guess yes. What about that incident with Bravo? He actually found poison, right?
Yeah, but in terms
But
of like what they might come across things, we really haven't had any issues with them finding other targets, just because they're not being rewarded on things. So I don't think we've had any like big unusual circumstances where they've found something other than CRB or OFB.
Or OFB, yeah. Actually, yeah, I misinterpreted the question. I was thinking of just like finding like food or something that was, but truffles, I guess. Yeah, I get it. Thank you, Marley.
And Marley, while we have you on, can you tell us like the difference between a handler and a trainer?
So my job as a handler, when I came in, the dogs were already trained. They had their initial training done at the USDA Center in Georgia. And part of my job is doing sort of weekly regular maintenance training, again, to kind of keep them sharp, to make sure they're not starting to get comfortable responding to OFB or, picking up other behaviors that aren't going to be beneficial in the field. So we do some training, but we're not really doing that initial odor imprinting in training as a handler. A trainer is going to do a lot more intensive groundwork with the dog and shaping of the dog, whereas the handler is the person that's actually applying the dog's skills and working with them in the field.
So thank you for sharing that. Great. Well, I think we will I'll open it up to kind of the rest of our question and answer. I think we have all of our speakers still on the call. And I will just kind of go through them in progression. So Nicole Boyd, I believe this is for Deborah. Are there any specific contamination protocols that are followed while training in the live nests?
Oh, what? Let's see. Oops. Here we go. There we go. Hi. Okay, I'm sorry. What was the question again?
No problem. Are there any specific contamination protocols that are followed while training in the live nests?
In the live nest. So we're talking about the avian botulism?
Yeah.
In the taro fields. So no, I mean, it's the avian botulism only affects the birds. It doesn't affect dogs, doesn't affect humans. Of course, when the dogs find a bird, then we pull them back and we call the rangers. I mean, if it's alive, we call the rangers and they can give it an antitoxin, and then they take it back to the office and they give it fluids, and then it rushes off to rehab, and hopefully we get it back in a week. If it's a carcass, then I go ahead and I collect it.
You
and then
mentioned muzzles and lead.
And oh yeah, thank you. And then yeah, I collect it and we give it to the rangers, and then they check it for avian botulism, which is a little bit more intense. But you're right, when they are in any time that we're working with birds, they do wear muzzles. So the muzzles were come from Australia, New Zealand, I'm sorry, New Zealand conservation, and they're made per dog, very specialized. So they're always on lead. So our dogs are not just loose to go around the refuge. We do have them on lead, and they do have the muzzles on so they won't hurt the birds. Nothing about aggression, but just so they won't hurt the birds.
Great, good to know. And while I have you, I just mentioned that Alice Roberts said hi in the Q&A. She just said she remembers you from GEMS, and she's very excited to hear your work. So yeah, just wanted to share that from mahalo.
That's great. Yeah.
Okay. Our next one will be for Roberta. What steps did you take to reduce false alerts for Oriental flower beetle or OFB?
Marley, do you want to answer the question?
Yeah, I did a lot of work with that initially with the writer and had a lot of success. And with anything like that where we notice that there's a new issue that we need to address, it's really just going back to basics and going back to making it as easy and simple for the dog to be successful, and then rewarding them on that. So in that case, we went back to, I might start a training session just putting out containers. All of our training is done with CRB in containers for biosecurity reasons. But we would have maybe a large concentration of CRB, something that's very easy for him to identify and respond to successfully, and then we reward heavily. And then we might increase the difficulty of that by introducing maybe a little bit of OFB alongside maybe multiple containers of CRB or just a lot of CRB odor, so that hopefully, again, that CRB is going to be much more appealing. And then they would be more likely to respond to that. And if at any point in the process, as we kind of introduce more and more difficult stages, they're struggling, then we take a step back. Like, it's never a bad thing to take a step back, because ultimately we want the dog to be successful. But we might also do things where we will assist them. If it seems like they're about to respond to OFB, we might just kind of keep them moving, or we might help them respond more quickly to CRB by giving them a command just to really reinforce that. And then eventually we can work in stages up to a point where we can just put out containers that are either all blank containers and only OFB and there's no CRB present. And at that point, because we've worked in all these very small stages, from the basics up to these more difficult challenges, we'll see them being much more confident and not even trying to respond to anything, even though their target odor isn't there and that more tempting OFB presence is there. And it just takes patience, and it takes time and some troubleshooting, but it is possible to work through it.
Oh, great to know. And then another one from Nicole. What type of contamination protocols are in place for live detections of CRB? Did I just take that one, Roberta, or?
Okay, sorry, can you repeat the question?
No problem. What type of contamination protocols are in place for live detections of CRB?
What type of decontamination? So we avoid touching it with our hands. It's in containers, in separate containers. We store them in their own coolers. We don't, well, when we take them to the field, right? And we don't, when we keep our larvae in just in a space where nothing else is there. It's just CRB. So yeah, so when we transport it from our office to the field, we are not really handling it with our hands, but we don't go too crazy with the gloves and everything else that you would think if you're working in like a lab, trying to avoid cross contamination.
And then I'll just respond quickly to Alice. She's asking, are we not worried about OFB? So the Oriental flower beetle is a kind of a pest, more of a pest nuisance species than an invasive pest. It's not quite as bad as coconut rhinoceros beetle, where it's taken out the whole tree, but you will see boom and bust of Oriental flower beetle every now and then. And they just kind of like to feed on, your typical garden variety plants. So a lot of people will come across them in their backyards. They look very similar, but you can check on our BIS website. We have a great little graphic on there that you can throw in that website that shows kind of the differences between those two species. All right, so let's see, do we have... Sorry guys, I know we're going a little bit over, but thank you so much for all of these great questions. Okay, I will share Anthony's comment here. Anthony belongs to a missing person search and rescue team in New York State, and we are trained to recognize certain invasive plants like giant hogweed in order to keep our dogs away from, because the oils from the plant can cause skin blisters on the dog, especially on the face. I think this is relating back to the LFA dog and how that can impact the search. Let me see. And then Trisha, I was wondering, because you talked a little bit about scent biology and how that all works. I was wondering, how many scents can a dog learn? Or is it just the dog for its whole life will just be focused on one scent? Or if they can kind of go in between bugs and plants.
Sorry, was that a question for me?
Yeah, I was just wondering from what you learned at that school, if
So yeah, Craig did talk about that. It is possible, and some of the other handlers mentioned it before, that dogs can be trained for multiple scents. For example, eventually after Freddie is consistent and trustworthy in his work in the field here on Maui, we would like to have him trained on treated ants. So because we have several areas that have LFA that are in treatment, but right now we think those are probably going to have a different scent picture for him. So we're not going to introduce those yet. But yes, Craig himself has trained dogs for multiple things. And as if you saw the video where he's doing scent discrimination, it just kind of adds another part of the picture that he's looking out for. So it's something that you just build into his scent maintenance and scent training, and it can be done. It has been done. It's something that in the future we hope to kind of keep it on to the LFA with Freddie, but just kind of broaden his horizon so he's able to detect untreated and treated ants. So.
All right, and then I'll round up. This will be our last question. I'll go with Kiyoko. How is conservation dog training different from your typical dog training, like for your regular old house dog?
Oh, well, it's a lot more fun because, obedience, not all dogs want to do that. But it seems like, well, at least the dogs that I work with love to do the scenting work. They just get to really be dogs. It is very difficult, though, especially conservation, because you're working in environments with a lot of, environmental challenges, distractions, and stuff like that. So that part is definitely harder.
Thank you for that little bit of wisdom. Okay. Oh, sorry, I have a couple more in here. I'm going to try to wrap up. Okay, so I think this one is for the CRB folks. How do you protect the dogs from ingesting pathogens in the compost piles? Certainly, you wouldn't want to inhale bacteria, fungal spores, and viruses. Anyone want to take that one?
So a lot of times we'll try to be careful about where we're searching, and we'll check with whatever property owner we're searching to make sure that material hasn't been treated with pesticides or other things. And then if there is CRB, then we will follow up with either pesticide, heat treatment, removal, things like that. But it's a lot of times just communicating with what's been in there. There's not much we can really do about environmental factors. We just try to keep them kind of around the edges of the piles, and make sure that the material is settled and is not blowing up dust prior to searching them. But as for like what's in the material, as long as we can verify that there's no pesticides or chemicals in there. We can do that.
Okay. And then Haley wants to know, this could be from anyone, can you train your dogs to avoid distractions like pigs and goats? Or is it just up to the breed that you're trying to train?
I can take this one. So part of the training I didn't want to do too many videos, but working with Freddie in Australia, I did do searches with him while there was chaos. There was other dogs, balls and toys being thrown all around him, and he's expected to work and he's expected to not focus on it, and that's what he does. So yes, dogs can be trained to focus. And I do think it's also kind of a part of their personality. Like the dogs that get chosen to do detection work are very play driven and they'll do anything to get their reward. So.
Great. Well, thank you guys for all participating in that great discussion. We had a lot of questions. If anyone wants to follow up, please feel free. I will throw Kavehi, can you share my email? And then if there's any other last minute questions, I can share that with our panelists here. They also kind of share their contact info a little bit, but in case you missed it, I can forward it along. So yeah, with that, thank you all to our amazing panelists, as well as for Marley for joining us as a trainer, and of course to our awesome support staff here with BISC. Kavehi, if you want to run that final poll. We just have a last couple question poll if you have time to fill it out. I know we're a little bit over, but we would really appreciate it. It just helps with all of our programmatic stuff. So thank you so much. And we hope to see you guys all again. We'll have this recording up in a few days and hopefully you can share it with all the folks who may have missed it. So yeah, mahalo.